When they left, Mum asked me to bring Tootsie inside. She was still found sound asleep in her lounge chair. I picked her up and carried her into the house. She opened her eyes, and when she saw me, she smiled and said, "Yuck." At 5, the phone rang. This is it, I thought. It's all over. They found him, splattered across the road, his bike mangled, mess. Or maybe the Princeton crew found him. Maybe they dragged them out of the lake, his face blue and swollen. I felt a big lump in my throat. If only I'd let him come to the picnic with me, none of this would have happened. If only I hadn't wanted to kill him when he woke up this morning. Now it was too late. I pictured the funeral, Fudge and Daniel side by side in 2 small white coffins. "Peter, would you get the phone?" Mum said. I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I almost couldn't get the word out. How was I going to tell Mum if it was bad news? "Hi, Peter." "Fudge, where are you?" "Guess." "The train station?" "No." "The bus station?" "No." "The police station?" "No. Do you give up?" "Yeah. Where are you?" "At Sandy's Bakery." "What?" "Sandy's Bakery." "Down by the highway?" "Yeah." "You rode all the way to the highway?" "It was easy." "Is Daniel with you?" "Yeah." Mum grabbed the phone out of my hand. "Fudgy, my angel, I am so glad you're all right. We've been so worried. Don't move, not an inch. We'll be right down to get you." We jumped into the car. I arranged Tootsie in her car seat and we took off. We found Dad and Mrs. Mannheim driving around by the lake. They told them the good news and they followed us all the way to the highway. Fudge and Daniel were standing outside the bakery. They looked very small. Fudge was holding a paper bag with Sandy's printed on it. Mum parked, jumped out of the car and hugged Fudge. "I'm so glad to see you." I felt another different kind of lump in my throat this time. "Be careful, Mommy," Fudge said. "You'll squash your brownies." When we got back to the house, Fudge settled into Mum's favourite chair and said, "We went to the deli next to Sandy's for lunch. We shared a pastrami sandwich." "We each had 3 pickles," Daniel added, relaxing into Dad's chair, "and a cream soda." Mum and Dad and Mrs. Mannheim sat in a row on the sofa facing the runaways. "You know that what you did today was wrong," Mums began. "It was inconsiderate and foolish," Dad said. "Not to mention dangerous," Mum added. "And stupid," I said. "And while you were very glad to see you," Mrs. Mannheim said, "we're also very angry." "Very," Mum said. "And you will have to be punished," Dad said. Fudge and Daniel looked at each other. "What do you suggest?" Dad asked them. "Put us to bed at 8 o'clock tonight," Fudge said. "That doesn't seem appropriate," Mum said. 7 o'clock, Daniel asked, yawning. "Yes," Mrs. Mannheim said. "Because you're tired, but that's not a suitable punishment." "Why don't you take away their bicycles for a month?" I suggested, expecting everyone to shout, "Peter, please." Suddenly the room went very quiet. "No!" Fudge shouted. "Not fair!" Daniel hollered. Mum, Dad, and Mrs. Mannheim exchanged looks. "I think that makes a lot of sense," Dad finally said. "I think so too," Mrs. Mannheim said. "I agree," Mum said. I couldn't believe it. They'd finally taken me seriously. But how will we get to school?" Fudge asked, pouting. "You'll walk," Mum told him. "And that way, the way you did before you had bicycles." "But, Mommy," Fudge began, "if you love me—" "It's because we love you," Mum said. "It's because we all love and care about you." Fudge stood up and stomped his feet. "Well, I'm sorry I bought you brownies." Dad took their bicycles, chained them together, and set them on the shelf in the garage. "I hope you both learn that you can't run away every time something happens that you don't like." "Running away doesn't solve anything," Mum said. "Well, we had a good time," Daniel said, "so ha-ha." "And a good lunch," Fudge said, "and we showed you we are old enough to ride to the lake, so there." "No, you didn't," Dad said. "You showed us you aren't ready for the privilege of riding your bicycles." Fudge and Daniel looked at each other again, and this time they both started crying. We ordered a pizza for supper. Daniel stopped crying long enough to remind Mum, "And I don't eat anything with peas or onions." "How could I forget?" Mum said. After Daniel and Mrs. Mannheim had gone home, Mum put on her new Mozart record on the stereo, and we sat around the living room table working on a family picture puzzle. It's a mountain scene at sunset, and so far we've got one corner of it put together. "Peter, ran away one time, Fudge said, chewing on a piece of puzzle. I took it away from him and said, I thought about running away, but I never went through with it. I found a matching piece and snapped it into place. And Daddy ran away when he didn't want to work anymore, Fudge said, stacking up the orange pieces. What are you talking about? Dad said. That's why we moved to Princeton, isn't it? Fudge said. No, of course not, Dad told him. Whatever gave you that idea? I figured it out myself, Fudge said. Well, that's not true, Dad said. Then why did we come to Princeton? Fudge said. For a change, Dad explained. And that's why I wanted to go to the lake, Fudge said. For a change. Well, speaking of Princeton and changes, Mum said, polishing off her third brownie, Millie and George will be back soon and we have to decide what to do. What do you mean? I said. Well, either we have to find another house here or we have to get ready to move back to the city. You mean we have a choice? I asked. I always thought that we were living in Princeton for a year and, well, that was it. Tootsie toddled over and reached up and grabbed a handful of sunset pieces and ran away with them. Hey, come back with those, I said, chasing her across the room. I handed her a rubber mouse and she dropped the puzzle pieces. I'm not crazy about the idea of commuting, Dad said, but if the rest of you want to stay in Princeton, I'll do it. Commuting? I said. Yeah, Dad said. I'm going to go back to work at the agency. No more writing? I asked. Not for now, Dad said. I found out that I'm not very good at it. I may never finish my book. I knew he wouldn't, but I didn't say so. I'm very good at advertising, though, Dad continued, and I'm anxious to get back to work. He looked at me. But that doesn't mean I want to be president of the agency, Peter. I know, I said. What about you, Mum? What are you going to do? Well, with Daddy going back to work at the agency, I'd really like to get started on my art history classes, maybe at NYU. That's in the city, isn't it? Yeah, Mum said. It's in Greenwich Village. So you both want to go back to the city, I asked. They touched hands and Mum said, I guess we do. What about you, Peter? Dad asked. What do you want to do? I don't know, I said. I'm used to it here, but I still miss New York. I don't remember New York, Fudge said. Of course you do, I told him. No, I don't, he said. Can I ride my bike there? In some places, I said, like Central Park. I can't remember. I remember Central Park, Fudge said. And you remember our apartment, I told him, and the elevator and Henry. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Henry in the elevator. Mum and Dad laughed. And what about Tootsie? Fudge said. Where do you want to live, Princeton or New York? Yuck, Tootsie said. Did you hear that? Fudge asked. Yuck, Tootsie said again. Mum and Dad exclaimed surprised looks. That's Tootsie's first word. She wants to live in New York too. New Yuck, Tootsie said. And I realised that I was the only one who knew that Tootsie had been saying yuck all day. And I wasn't about to tell them that it had nothing to do with the city. That makes it unanimous, Fudge said. What a big word, Mum said. I know a lot of big words, Fudge told her. You'd be surprised about how many big words I know. Fudgy, Mum said, you're full of surprises. So we're going back, I thought. Back to the Big Apple. Back to our apartment. Back to Jimmy Fargo and Sheila Tubman. And my rock in the park. Back to Walking Turtle and back to the Pooper Scooper. But it's worth it. It's all worth it. I picked up Tootsie and swung her around. I couldn't help laughing. And Tootsie laughed too. To some people, there's no place like New Yuck. And I guess I'm one of them.